Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. As we begin, can you say a few words about your current role? What's in your purview?
Thanks for having me, Misha. So my role is I am the Chief Information Security Officer and Vice President of Security for Acquia. We are platform as a service and software as a service company serving a wide variety of industries.
Mm-hmm. And as a software, is it Drupal? Am I pronouncing it right? The backbone.
Yes, our primary offering is around Drupal. We were actually founded by the gentleman who originally wrote Drupal, Dries Beitert,
Mm-hmm.
and he is still our Chief Technology Officer. But we
Mm-hmm.
also have a broader set of offerings around digital asset management, customer contact management. So we have some SaaS offerings that go alongside our Drupal offering as well. It's become a pretty comprehensive DXP package.
Mm-hmm. I understand. I understand. Well, that kind of paints the picture of where you are, but just to get a sense of the career trajectory and not just the point on the line, but the entire line. Can you say a few words? How did you get into cybersecurity? What was the
Certainly.
starting point?
So mine is a fairly long career. I was actually reflecting on it earlier today, and I've been at this about 35 years at this point, since I was 21. Um, I leapt straight into industry out of high school, pulling cable, pulling things like ArcNet and Token Ring and ThickNet that most folks these days haven't heard of. And I pretty much worked my way up from layer one through layer seven to what I call layer eight, the human or security layer. I've held almost every position that I supervise as CISO, as a SOC analyst, as a SOC manager, as a firewall analyst. I was a routing and switching guy for a long time, and I've been a consultant for a vast majority of the compliance frameworks that we have to follow. So I was PCI QSA for a very long time, only gave that up recently. So my career arc has been one of self-taught and just advancing, trying to stay ahead of the curve and keep the pay up, so to speak.
For sure, for sure. Which is amazing because I think it gives you the perspective, and also you speak the same language with everyone who reports to you because as you said, you've done their job. They cannot kind of you cannot they cannot come up with an excuse, or because you can see through everything. So which gives you a very, very interesting, unique perspective, this 360 perspective. And with the experience and that you had in the industry, what would be your advice for someone who's maybe more junior? Maybe they're either looking to make a career switch from technology into cybersecurity, or maybe even earlier, they're still I know in college, maybe looking at the space. It's growing, it's exciting, it's interesting, it's adversarial. You're fighting the bad guys. What couple of things they should spend their time on now to set them up for success in the future?
I think a lot of it depends on what really interests you, because cybersecurity, in order to be most effective, honestly needs to be a labor of love. And for me, what makes cybersecurity so interesting is this gives me the opportunity to think like a criminal without actually acting like a criminal.
Interesting.
So that's why I found a lot of pleasure in the penetration testing and security research aspect of the business. And from my personal experience, I highly recommend pursuing basic hack the box courses or free hacking courses.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to break things. I found that the most valuable input into building things is knowing as much how to build them as well as how not to build them. And even if you're going to pursue a career in application development, I still recommend learning the adversarial techniques so that you can learn to think outside the box. Because penetration testing and security research, and just security in general, from an offensive standpoint, is the art of making it do something it's not supposed to do. So that leaves open a wide opportunity of interesting techniques. That is one of the first places I would go, because it's very interesting and it's the cool thing to do. But there's also good, solid work to be done in the compliance world. So study the ISO frameworks, study PCI, SP 853 Rev 5 from NIST. These are all critical compliance frameworks. And I would recommend just download them. They're all free. and read them. And it's really, really spectacularly dry reading, but there's a lot to be learned there. And I would caution as you go through your career to think of your world in terms of how do I make this thing safer and more secure, not how do I achieve this compliance framework or that compliance framework. If you're doing your security work right, the compliance stuff will just come automatically.
Interesting. So it's what's the outcome? What's the finish line? What's thinking of what you're trying to accomplish? So you're not trying to just check the box that
No.
we're compliant. You want to make sure that the final outcome is a more secure organization is what you have in mind first and foremost.
Exactly.
It is. The compliance with the framework will come naturally.
Exactly. It's our job to protect the organization, the clients, the data, safety, and health. Compliance frameworks are very useful. Don't get me wrong, because it is a way for a third party to say, yes, we looked at this and they're doing exactly what they say they are doing, or, here are a couple little blemishes in the system. And by the way, any perfect audit is suspect to me. There are always findings in any audit. So yeah, focus on the security and the compliance will follow.
Certainly, it makes a lot of sense. At Acquia, we probably at this point have about 1,600 members, and we talk a lot to cybersecurity practitioners. And often we find that it's a stressful job at the end of the day. And part of the stress comes from the fact that, and again, maybe not everyone kind of espouses the same thinking, but as the defender, you have to be right 100% of the time. And as an attacker, you need to be right only once. And often you can have the best tools, the best systems, the best protocols in the world, but then it takes one employee who maybe is overworked, stressed, or busy, and they just click on the link, or it's a third-party provider that I know. Probably the best, most recent example is MGM and Caesars. I think it was a third-party IT provider. Someone at their IT help desk, there was a social engineering attack, and the attacker convinced that person to remove multi-factor authentication that allowed access, that allowed all sorts of bad things, kind of escalating from there. So, which is scary, right? So it can have all this investment and all the proper things, and then the attackers will go for the low-hanging fruit, for the weakest link in the chain, and they'll keep probing. How do you think about that? Is there kind of a holistic approach to just thinking about risk? Is it about communicating the spectrum of risk to the board and the C-level executives? What's the best way just to get your head around so that you can kind of stay sane in the job and do the best thing possible?
The first thing you have to do is understand that you're never going to get it perfect every time. There will be incidents. What matters is, what do you do about the incident? How do you recover from the incident? To lean on a little bit on an old trope, defense in depth matters, because the more layers an attacker has to go through, the more effort they have to put in, and the more opportunities you have to either stop them or detect them and keep them from getting to your highest risk or highest value assets. I prefer to approach security from a risk-based perspective, because that makes it easiest for me to translate to the board and to senior executives. Because at the end of the day, you can boil things down to money, money, money. So what does it cost to implement a control? How much does that control protect? What is your risk appetite? How much money are you willing to put on the line and gamble? What will you put on the table and roll the dice? And it helps to be able to serve as that translator between the business needs of the organization and the security needs of the organization. I think that's a critical path for anybody in senior security, whether you're a CISO or a VP or even simply a line manager. You need to be able to articulate what it is you're trying to accomplish and why it's important, and just exactly how important it is to the people who sign checks and who assign resources. If you simply come in screaming like Chicken Little, saying the sky is falling, the hackers are going to own us, and it's just the worst thing ever, you're never going to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. You need to be measured. You need to think about what it is you're trying to do and keep in mind the end goal, the long-term goal. Tools are not the answer to everything. Bodies are not the answer to everything. You have to have a combination of tools, people to use the tools, and processes that you use the tools to implement. That I feel is the magic formula. And ignoring any one of those three, you are headed for failure. You'll spend more money than you need to, or you'll get less value than you require.
Well, it's like three legs of a stool. You're missing one, you're gonna fall. Even the other two are there. Over the three that you mentioned, it's I think it's a very, very good framework. Kind of in the same vein, we often find when you talk about risk and measuring risk and communicating risk and wearing the business hat, understanding the business needs, not just the technical needs of technical aspects of cybersecurity. Often I still feel, I think there's a lot more understanding at the board level, at the C level, but I think there's still kind of a lot of education that needs to be done. And one of the challenges that we see is that often the way the business is measured, you said money, 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 right? So it's usually, if it's a president or VP of sales, they're measured by revenues or they're measured by customer retention. And it's obvious, right? So the business doubled in a year. Everyone gets high five all around, pat on the shoulder. Here's your promotion. Here's your equity. A success from the cybersecurity standpoint is all things function.
You didn't hear from us.
Exactly, which is kind of sometimes there's like a knock on the door from the CFO. Hey, CISO, nothing really happens ever. Like we spent so much money on cybersecurity and nothing happened last year. And it's not in a way that, hey, you did a good job keeping it secure. It's like, hey, is it really?
Why are we spending this money?
Why are we spending so much money? So do you think it's a communication challenge that as an industry, cybersecurity practitioners need to kind of invest more into? I mean, I hate to bring it up, but people talk about technical skills and soft skills. It's spend more time kind of educating across the organization to your peers at your CVP director level and communicating up to the CEO, the president, and the board, so they understand that it's really, they're not dealing with teenagers in hoodies hunched over computers anymore. It's really well-resourced, well-funded, very sophisticated organizations with HR departments and profit sharing and vacation plans that has, well, I wouldn't say unlimited, but resources commensurate with the level of organizations they're trying to crack. So it's, do you think it's again, it's just a matter of communication and CISOs as a group need to do more into kind of making sure that the board's understanding more the complexities and different measuring sticks of how to measure success of a effective cybersecurity organization? What are your thoughts?
I think the primary challenge is finding an effective way and an honest way to measure success. Key performance indicators. What are the hours? What are the FTE hours that are being expended on vulnerability management? How many vulnerabilities were actually relevant to the organization over a period of time? What was your total FTE investment per vulnerability on average? These are good KPIs, because if you're resolving more vulnerabilities for less FTE, you're becoming more efficient. I think that in addition to tying things to money, numbers matter. Numbers generally don't lie unless you make them lie, of course. But if you can produce numbers to show something beyond, you didn't hear from me, therefore I'm doing a good job. No, you should be able to speak up and say, here are the attacks that we undertook. Here are the attacks that we thwarted. Here are things that got through. This is what we did about them. Here's our incident count. Here's our after action reports. And be able to produce evidence of the work that you're doing. It's useful for your own edification to ensure that you're doing the job right and give you the opportunity to improve your processes. But it also allows you to demonstrate both to your business leaders and to your auditors the kind of job that you're doing. Because there are three things that are required for any control in information security. There has to be a rule that says that you do it. You have to actually do it. but then you have to prove that you did it. And by doing this, by recording these things and keeping track and taking almost an accountancy approach to it, that allows you to get the visibility you need to tune your organization to get the best performance and value out of dollars spent in cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Well, one thing that's I think is interesting about cybersecurity, and I think it's what attracts a lot of people, is that it's ever changing, ever evolving. In terms of tools, in terms of attack vectors, in terms of exploits, and I think it just as an industry, I think it just grows leaps and bounds above and beyond, let's say, technology in general. And I think it's just a testament of the role that technology plays in our lives on a personal level, family level, corporate level, government level. It just, we're more and more dependent on it. Therefore, when it goes down, we feel it a lot more acutely. And I think it's just the level of attention devoted to cybersecurity, I think, is just testament of that growth. And as a result, the things that people worry about kind of changes. Still is identity and access management. Then with work from home, the perimeter kind of disappeared, and the move to the cloud accelerated with corresponding challenges as well. I think now people are concerned about AI and deep fakes, and how AI may be used as exploits that we maybe have not seen before. What do you think are top 2-3 biggest themes, biggest threats that you see right now? And how do you think this will change in 12 months, 24 months?
I think that one of the key things is you cannot think of cybersecurity as an island inside your organization only. Build your walls and stay within those walls and you'll be fine. It doesn't work like that anymore. There's far more process interconnection between organizations, to the point with MGM and Caesars. They were compromised because of a failure of third-party risk management. So third-party risk management, I think today, above AI and above IAM, I think that third-party risk management has not had the attention that's needed, and there is a great deal of tech debt that has accumulated as a result of it. If you go through and look at all of your suppliers, you might be surprised at how many of them actually have the ability to touch parts of your organization that aren't immediately obvious. Ask Target about that. An HVAC vendor can access ICS systems, and those ICS systems are on your internal network. And there are just so many different and new places for bridging because of all the connectivity, that really paying attention to your third parties, I think, is the first and foremost thing that keeps me up at night. I do worry about AI, but I think that there has been a great deal of hype and FUD around the capabilities of AI. I'm not saying that there aren't capabilities there, but I think we need to avoid being distracted by the bright, shiny thing. It's just another attack vector. It's just another tool in the attackers and the defenders toolbox. Treat it as such. Don't panic. Manage your processes, manage your perimeters, keep your layered security in place, and you will remain reasonably safe. And then, yes, I do agree, IAM is a concern. I have always considered the most critical attack vector to be the inside attacker. And this goes back to part of what I love about this job is the ability to think like a criminal without actually having to act like a criminal. So I stop and I think, how would I compromise this organization? There was an old XKCD cartoon that, on the first panel, it says, let's build this multi-billion-dollar machine to crack this asymmetric cryptography. In the second panel, the guy says, let's take this $17 wrench and beat on the guy's knees until he gives us the password. I'm going to be the second guy.
I saw that.
I'm going to try and compromise an insider. And everybody has a price. Morals and ethics aside, everybody has a price. And as we grow globally, your exchange rate changes quite a bit. And there are some bargains to be had in internal compromises, I would say. So keeping a careful eye on the inside of your organization as well as the outside. It's not paranoia. It's just exercising reasonable security control. Use role-based access control. If you need access to it, you get access to it. If you don't need access to it, you don't get access to it. And do not allow position to translate to system privilege. For example, just because I'm the CISO, I actually probably have some of the lowest access capability in the company because I don't need access to the deep technical systems. There are people who know what they're doing with those things. So in some organizations, you'll find that senior security management insist on having all the privileges. And it is as much prestige as it is privilege. So that lends itself to insider attack problems.
Mhm.
So keep as close an eye to the inside as you do to the outside, and you should be able to remain safe. Those are the three big things that really concern me at the moment. There are dozens of little things because we're platform as a service. We have a huge attack surface, but it's not even the largest attack surface I've dealt with in my career. And if you keep your wits about you, keep your team ready to go and skilled up, everything will be fine.
And you think those three will remain somewhat steady over the course of next 12 to 24 months, or you think something is emerging that may play out a little bit differently?
I think that we're going to see more compromises through third party and through insider threat. I think that AI is the bright, shiny thing right now. I'm old enough and I've been in this industry long enough that I remember when everybody panicked because the program Satan or Santa, depending on who you were talking to, but the first attack framework was published and it was the end of the world. This was going to break security everywhere. No, it didn't. It was just a tool. AI is just a tool. And honestly, as AI self-trains in the world, it's honestly becoming a little stupider, I think. So I think AI is going to fade away. Third party will remain a thing. And I think that there's going to be a great deal more attention paid to the open source community because almost every organization integrates open source into their code bases these days. But you have to look to those open source communities to ensure that things are being supported at a level that you require as a commercial entity. So I think that's going to be the next up and coming thing to pay attention to.
Interesting, because we did see some of the exploits when some of those libraries were community supported and people burn out or check out or forget to renew a domain, and then you re-register the domain, take over the library and push malicious code, and boom, all of a sudden it just automatically gets updated in 5,000 organizations. And it's certainly a fairly interesting vector that I think quite a few companies are aware of, and there's a handful of cybersecurity vendors there trying to address this particular problem, because to your point, open source is and getting more so kind of baked into the code base at various organizations. And speaking of vendors, again, we kind of sit between the two worlds. Our members are cybersecurity practitioners, but we work with some of the technology partners. So every time the question of vendors comes up, it's almost always a visceral reaction from CISOs, because it seems like nowadays everyone is getting a couple of hundred emails before breakfast from vendors. I hear all sorts of kind of pet peeves, personal cell phones ringing early in the morning on a Saturday and things like this. People
very much so.
People showing up in the office unannounced to inquire why you haven't responded to my 5 previous emails. So, and things like on a very aggressive nature, but at the same time, they're also vendors who are very thoughtful and patient and willing to play the long game, kind of, and contribute and provide value and establish relationship, build trust, and give before asking, give before asking for, time and some sort of commitment to listen to a product presentation or demo. From your perspective, I mean, you mentioned you've been in the industry for a while. I'm sure you have established a relationship with vendors. what are some of your pet peeves in dealing with vendors, and again, without naming names, protecting the innocent, and
There are no innocent.
no innocent, fair enough. And on the flip side, what in your kind of maybe last 6 months, what some of the vendors who did something that impressed you from this playing the long game, building a relation perspective? What are some of the anecdotes you could share?
So I do have a strong pet peeve, and it is possible to land on Robert's naughty list, as it were. There are vendors who have pursued my business with such a high level of aggression that I've just been turned off on the entire thing. I don't care how good the product is. If you can't be civil in how you sell it to me, I'm not interested in speaking with you. So there are certain tool vendors or tool manufacturers, if you will, that can take a very aggressive approach. And they find out fairly quickly with me that that's not the path to success. The path to success is partnership. I have a number of vendors, tool vendors specifically, who have been fantastic. Give me a reasonable proof of concept time. Help me through the proof of value. Understand that your tool may not be the right tool for us, and that being the case, be an adult about it. Improve your tool, and we'll come back to it. We'll look at it again. My goal is to get what's best for the company, and generally, the best tool will win. The best value will win. But I will slam the door if you become overly aggressive. I have a couple of partners that I work with, and I'm not going to name names, who are true partners. They look at what we need, and they will bring a variety of different tools to do bake-offs. Internally, I know that I've worked for VARs throughout my life. I used to install muxes that were sold by a VAR. Not many people today even know what a mux is. And you're always going to have spiffs. You're always going to have incentives from your manufacturers. And the partners that I put the most trust in ignore that. And as they say, they're in it for the long game. If they can't get a sale on this thing that's got this huge margin, but they get a small margin thing that really impresses us and does a great job for us, we're going to come back to them and talk to them about, okay, what's for our next thing? Security budgets have a tendency to increase. There's always more opportunity in the future. Sometimes you have to be able to accept no as an answer and just, again, be an adult about it. Don't make it like a high school romance breakup, and you will find that you will keep my attention far longer. There are vendors who I've had to say no to over the years, that when we had the right mix of value and tool and project, that we're all in with them. And then these same vendors, because I trust they had the patience to wait until the right time, they're also going to have the patience to continue to support my team after the sale. Because after the honeymoon's over is when it really matters. Exactly. You're going to do a great job for the first 3 months when I can still back out of that contract. But let's talk about a year from now. How's our relationship a year from now? And I have had 1 or 2 major vendors that I've had to cut loose because the quality of their support fell off, and thus the quality of their product didn't have the higher value for me, and I had to move to a higher value opportunity. So I always keep my ears open to see what's cooking, because things are always changing in this industry. Mm-hmm. And if I said no to you this quarter, or if I said no to you this fiscal year, maybe there's a yes in the future. Keep improving your product. Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's not a no. It's no right now. And if you have as you said, if you're an adult about it, and if you have the patience, and if you again continue to invest in the future partnership and provide value without asking anything in return, then you will eventually, you're more likely to get the seat at the table in the end, rather than someone who's overly aggressive and focused on the transactional aspect of the interaction. Yeah, but thank you for sharing this. This is really good. I know we're coming up on time. As we wrap up, Finya, you mentioned the email newsletter is of interest. What's some of the other things that we do that you value, and what are some of the things we should stop? And what I'm sure you're probably a member of other
organizations, associations? What is something that we're missing that we could focus on in 2024?
I am very satisfied with my relationship with Acquia at this time. I very much like the weekly because it becomes a kind of one-stop shop for me to see what's going on in the industry. And it goes beyond just, oh, what's the latest threat? Who got compromised? What's the gossip? But there's also who's moving around? Where are they moving? This is a small industry. If you work with somebody, there is a non-trivial chance that sometime in the next 5 years, you will work with them again. And I find it fascinating to see where everybody's moving around. Where are the opportunities? Between these and the podcasts, I find the podcasts to be informative because I like to get different perspectives. It's very easy to get stuck in your silo and not see outside of what you're doing. And perhaps a different segment of the industry has a different approach that might be useful for what I'm doing. There have been IT approaches that become very useful in SaaS and PaaS, and vice versa. So I like having that expanded perspective. I keep my membership in such organizations reasonably limited because many of them are frankly sales tools. And what I found with Acquia is nobody's pitching anything at me. When I come to talk to somebody, we're having a genuine conversation about what's going on in the industry. And I appreciate that. It means that I'm getting value for my time and I'm providing value for my time as well. So that's my upside here. As far as, what could you do better? Nothing honestly springs to mind right now, Misha.
Well, we'll try new things, and if we stumble, I would appreciate your candid feedback. We only exist for the benefit of our members, so we're always open to hearing the good, the bad, and the ugly. I really appreciate your feedback. You really made my day. We value your input and your feedback. Robert, I know we a little bit running over time. Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect?
Your best bet is to tag me on LinkedIn. I do check my LinkedIn every day. Again, it's become primarily a sales tool, to be honest, but I've also made a number of really valuable connections in the industry, particularly in the senior security space. That's been helpful for me in growing my career and getting some mentorship. And anybody who claims in this industry that they don't need mentorship, that there isn't something that they need to learn, should retire. If you stopped learning, you don't belong in this industry. Absolutely. So I continue to learn from my peers, and LinkedIn is the best way to track me down. Robert Former at LinkedIn. Awesome.
Well, it's an ever-changing industry, but it's also cybersecurity is a team sport, and you if you recognize that, if you play as a team, not as you will get so much further. Robert, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing.
Thank you, Misha. I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely.